The restaurant was one of those places where rich people went to feel accomplished. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters who moved like shadows. My father had insisted I come to dinner, saying it was important. I should have known something was wrong when his new wife Catherine smiled at me with her perfectly painted lips. "Elena, darling, have some wine," she cooed, pushing a glass toward me. Her son Brett sat beside her, smirking at his phone like he owned the world. My father cleared his throat, the way he always did before disappointing me. "Elena, we need to discuss something financial." My stomach tightened. He cut into his steak, not meeting my eyes. "Your college fund, the one we've been saving. Well, Catherine and I decided to redirect those resources." The words hit me like cold water. Redirect. "Brett needs a car for his job search," Catherine explained sweetly. "Something reliable. Professional." Brett finally looked up, grinning. "It's an Audi, actually. Fully loaded. Pretty sweet ride for networking, you know." My wine glass trembled in my hand. $50,000. Years of saving. My mother's dying wish. For a luxury car. For a stepbrother who'd never worked a real day in his life. "Elena, you're already doing well," my father said dismissively. "It's just money. You'll be fine." I stood slowly, staring at him in silence. Then I walked out without saying a word. Behind me, Catherine whispered something that made them all laugh. They had no idea what they just triggered. I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel as memories flooded back. I was 15 when my mother got sick, breast cancer that spread faster than anyone expected. I remembered her thin hand holding mine in the hospital. "Promise me you'll go to college, Elena," she'd whispered. "Get your education. Build a life where nobody can take your security away." After she died, I'd worked 2 jobs through high school. Weekends at a grocery store, evenings at a coffee shop. Every dollar I didn't need for basic expenses went into that college fund. My father had promised to protect it, to add to it, to honor my mother's memory. I trusted him. When he married Catherine 2 years ago, I tried to be supportive. My father seemed happy after years of loneliness. Brett was annoying but harmless, I'd thought. Catherine seemed elegant and put together. I hadn't seen the manipulation. Hadn't noticed how she'd slowly isolated my father from his old friends, how she'd started managing his finances, how Brett had moved from temporary stay to permanent fixture in my father's house. The college fund wasn't just money. It was my mother's legacy, my teenage years of sacrifice, my future security. And they'd spent it on a luxury car for a lazy 23-year-old who couldn't hold a job. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Don't be dramatic. Family helps family." I stared at those words until they blurred. Then I started my car and drove home, my mind already calculating my next moves. The next morning I called the university's financial aid office. My hands shook as I explained the situation to the counselor. "I need to withdraw from the graduate program," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Temporarily. There's been a change in my financial circumstances." "I'm sorry to hear that, Elena," the counselor replied sympathetically. "We can process a leave of absence. When do you think you'll be able to return?" "I'm not sure yet. But I'll figure it out." After hanging up, I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been maintaining for 3 years. My father didn't know I'd been managing his retirement planning. He'd asked for my help after Catherine complained his finances were too complicated for her to understand. I'd set up automatic payments to his retirement community application fund, managed his credit monitoring, even co-signed on a consolidation loan to improve his score. He'd needed a strong credit profile to qualify for Mountain Vista Estates, the luxury retirement community he and Catherine had fallen in love with. I scrolled through the accounts, my cursor hovering over the Cancel Automatic Payment button. "Family helps family," his text had said. I clicked cancel on every single automatic transfer. Then I sent a formal email to the retirement community's financial board. "Please be advised that I am withdrawing all financial support and guarantees related to my father's application. Effective immediately." My phone rang within an hour. My father's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. The quiet revenge had begun. I couldn't sleep that night, so I did what I always did when stressed. I researched. Catherine's social media was carefully curated. All surface and no substance. But public records told a different story. Catherine had been married 3 times before my father. Her first husband had filed for bankruptcy 6 months after their divorce. Her second had lost his house. Her third, that was interesting, had accused her of fraud in the divorce proceedings, though the case was settled privately. I dug deeper, finding Brett's sparse digital footprint. Community college dropout after 1 semester. His last job listed on LinkedIn was pizza delivery, 2 years ago. Before that, retail positions that never lasted more than a few months. Yet somehow, he'd convinced my father he needed a $40,000 car for professional networking. I pulled up Catherine's marriage dates and cross-referenced them with financial records I could access publicly. Each marriage had lasted just long enough to access retirement funds or home equity. Each divorce had left her wealthier and her ex-husband struggling. My father was her 4th target. And Brett. He was the spoiled weapon she used to drain resources, playing the caring mother while manipulating generous men into funding her son's lifestyle. I started a document, meticulously recording every detail. Dates, amounts, patterns. I didn't know exactly how I'd use this information yet, but my mother had taught me something valuable. Knowledge is power, especially when people underestimate you. My phone buzzed. Another text from my father. Catherine says you're being selfish. Call me. I saved my research and closed my laptop. Let him think I was being selfish. Let them all think I was just hurt and dramatic. They'd learn the truth soon enough. The family text chain exploded over the next few days. My father started it. Elena is refusing to speak to us over a simple financial decision. This is childish. My half-sister Amanda, from my father's first marriage, jumped in immediately. Elena always was self-centered. Dad does so much for her and this is how she acts. Brett posted something on social media, not mentioning me by name but obvious enough. Crazy how some people don't understand that real family supports each other's success. Guess some folks are just bitter. Catherine sent a voice message to the family group. I'm heartbroken that Elena feels this way. We only wanted to help Brett get on his feet. Why is she making this about her? My phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Cousins I barely knew were weighing in. My father's friends were sending concerned messages. The narrative was clear. Ungrateful daughter abandons family over money. I didn't respond to any of it. Not one message, not one call. Silence, I was learning, was its own kind of power. Instead, I focused on my next steps. I contacted the bank where my father's consolidation loan was held, the one I'd co-signed. I couldn't remove myself from an active loan, but I could document everything for future legal protection. I pulled every email where my father had asked for financial help, every text where I'd agreed to co-sign or guarantee something. I organized them chronologically in a secure cloud folder. My phone rang again. My father's number. I watched it ring until it stopped, then returned to my documentation. Let them paint me as the villain. Villains, I was learning, often had the clearest view of the truth. 3 weeks after the dinner, I received a call from a credit monitoring service. Ms. Elena, we're calling to notify you of significant changes to the account you're monitoring. What kind of changes? I asked, though I already knew. The credit score has dropped 48 points in the last 3 weeks due to missed payments and increased credit utilization. My father's score. The one I'd spent years helping him build. Without my automatic payments managing his bills, he'd missed deadlines. Without my reminders, he'd maxed out credit cards. I thanked the service and hung up. Then I checked my email. Sure enough, there it was. A notice from Mountain Vista Estates requesting additional financial documentation due to concerns about application stability. My father's dream retirement community was already questioning his qualifications. I thought about calling him, warning him. But then I remembered sitting in that restaurant, watching Brett smirk about his new Audi while my father dismissed my mother's legacy as just money. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching graduate programs. If I couldn't afford my current university, I'd find another path. An email arrived from Professor Williams, my former mentor from undergrad. "Elena, I heard about your leave of absence. Can we talk?" Called him immediately. "What happened?" he asked gently. I told him everything. The college fund, the car, the betrayal. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Elena, I may have a solution. Let me make some calls." 2 days later, he called back with news that would change everything. "The executive MBA program at Riverside University is offering you a full scholarship," Professor Williams explained, barely containing his excitement. "It's accelerated, 18 months instead of 3 years. And they want you to start next semester." I couldn't breathe. A full scholarship. How? I called in some favors. Showed them your undergraduate work, your recommendations, explained your situation without going into private details. They were impressed. "This is a better program than your previous one, Elena. Smaller cohort, better placement rates, direct connections to major corporations." Tears streamed down my face. "Professor Williams, I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Then say you'll make the most of this opportunity. And Elena," his voice grew serious, "sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to better paths. Your father thought he was taking away your future. He actually just redirected you toward a bigger one." Accepted immediately. The program started in 6 weeks, giving me time to prepare and relocate. But more importantly, it gave me leverage. I finally responded to my father's texts with a simple message. "I've been accepted to a better graduate program with a full scholarship. I'll be fine, like you said. Good luck with your retirement plans." I didn't mention that his retirement plans were already crumbling. Didn't mention the credit score drop or the Mountain Vista concerns. I just let him sit with the knowledge that I'd succeeded despite his betrayal. His response came an hour later. "That's good. See, everything works out." The lack of apology was almost impressive. But I was done expecting remorse from people who didn't understand what they'd taken. 2 months into my new program, I was thriving. The accelerated schedule was intense, but Professor Williams had been right. This was exactly where I needed to be. My cohort was brilliant, the connections were incredible, and I was learning more in weeks than I had in years. Then I got the call from my cousin Derek. "Elena, have you talked to your dad lately?" His tone was worried. "No." "Why?" "Brett's car got repossessed. Apparently he had a ton of unpaid parking tickets, and when they tried to collect, he couldn't pay. The car got towed, and your dad had to deal with it because it was registered in his name." I sat down slowly. "The car was in my dad's name." "Yeah. Catherine insisted on it for insurance purposes. Now your dad's stuck with the debt, and Brett's acting like it's no big deal. Catherine keeps saying you were supposed to handle this kind of stuff for them." "I see." My voice was calm, but my mind was racing. Derek hesitated. "There's more. I overheard Catherine complaining that your dad's retirement community application got delayed. Something about financial inconsistencies. She seemed really upset about it." After hanging up, I pulled up my carefully maintained spreadsheet. The timeline was perfect. My father's credit had dropped just enough to trigger additional scrutiny. The car repossession would hit his record soon. And without me managing his finances, he'd missed bill payments that I'd been handling for years. I hadn't needed to actively destroy anything. I'd simply stopped holding everything together. They were falling apart on their own, and I hadn't lifted a finger beyond walking away. The certification program offered an intensive consulting workshop. I threw myself into it, earning top marks and catching the attention of several corporate recruiters. By month 4, I had 3 job offers for post-graduation positions. I accepted a role with a prestigious consulting firm, the kind of opportunity I'd only dreamed about before. The salary was more than I'd imagined making in my first 5 years after graduation. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with a notification. Mountain Vista Estates had sent an automated update. Application status. Additional review required. I knew what that meant. They'd found something in my father's financial profile that concerned them. Probably the credit drop. Possibly the car repossession. Definitely the pattern of financial instability that had emerged since I'd stopped managing everything. I felt a twinge of something. Not quite guilt, but a ghost of the daughter I used to be. The one who would have fixed this for him. But that daughter had died in a restaurant when her father chose a luxury car over her mother's dying wish. A text arrived from an unknown number. This is Catherine. We need to talk about your father's retirement application. Can you call? I blocked the number without responding. 2 days later, my father called from a different phone. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Elena. His voice was tight, controlled. We need to discuss something. I'm listening. I'm having some issues with paperwork. Financial stuff. I thought maybe you could help straighten it out. Straighten what out? Just some credit things. Nothing major. He paused. Can you come over this weekend? I smiled despite myself. Sorry, Dad. I'm not available for that anymore. The silence stretched long. What do you mean you're not available? My father finally asked, his voice sharp. Exactly what I said. I'm busy with my program, my new job offers, building my own future. I don't have time to manage your finances anymore. Elena, don't be difficult. This is important. So was my college fund, I replied calmly. But that wasn't important enough to protect, was it? We're back to this. He sounded exasperated. I told you Brett needed that car. You said you'd be fine and you are fine. You got a scholarship. No thanks to you. Stop being dramatic. Family helps each other and right now I need help with these credit issues. It's affecting our retirement plans. I took a deep breath. Dad, let me be very clear. You made a choice when you gave away my college fund. You chose Catherine and Brett over me. That's fine, it's your money, your decision. But it's also my choice whether to keep managing your life. And I choose not to. You're being childish. No, I'm being consistent. You said everything works out. So it'll work out for you too. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking. It was the first time I'd directly confronted him since that dinner. It felt both terrifying and liberating. My phone immediately rang again. I declined the call and turned off my phone for the rest of the day. That evening, Derek texted me from his work email. Your dad showed up at my office asking for your address. I didn't give it to him. Just wanted you to know. I thanked him and made a mental note to be more careful. Month 6 of my program brought unexpected news. A debt collection agency had visited my father's house. Derek heard about it through the family gossip chain and called me immediately. It was intense, he explained. The collector showed up at the door while Brett and Catherine were there. Something about the car loan being in default. Since it's in your dad's name and Brett can't pay, they want the full amount plus fees. How much? He asked. $38,000. Plus the repossession costs and storage fees. I did quick math. That was nearly the entire college fund amount. Justice had a strange sense of irony. What did Catherine say? She freaked out. Started yelling at your dad about getting a loan to cover it. But apparently he can't qualify. Something about his credit being too low and not having a cosigner anymore. Because I'd been the cosigner. On his consolidation loan. On his credit cards. On everything that had made him look financially stable. Without me, he was just a man with declining credit, mounting debt, and a wife who'd married him for his money. Is he okay? I asked, surprising myself with a question. Derek sighed. Honestly. He looked stressed. Really stressed. Catherine isn't being supportive. She keeps saying you were supposed to handle all this financial stuff. Brett's acting like it's not his problem since the car's in your dad's name. After hanging up, I sat with my laptop open, staring at my spreadsheet. Part of me wanted to feel victorious. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad that it had come to this, Sad that my father couldn't see what was happening, sad that he'd chosen these people over his own daughter. But I didn't reach out, didn't offer to help. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Ms. Elena, my name is Frank Sutton. I believe we need to talk about Catherine Hayes. I almost deleted it as spam. But something made me keep reading. I was married to Catherine from 2008 to 2011. I saw your LinkedIn post about graduate school and noticed your last name. When I looked into it, I discovered Catherine had remarried, to your father. I think you should know what she's capable of. We met at a coffee shop near campus. Frank was in his early 60s, well-dressed, with the tired eyes of someone who'd learned expensive lessons. She bankrupted me, he said simply. Convinced me to invest in Brett's business opportunities. None of them were real. By the time we divorced, she drained our joint accounts and manipulated our son's college fund into her personal account. Your son. I leaned forward. My stepson, Catherine's son from her first marriage. Yes, Brett. He's done this before with my money. I pulled out my phone and showed him my research. As he read, his face grew grim. This is the same pattern, he confirmed. She finds financially stable men, usually ones with assets or good credit. She plays the devoted wife while slowly taking control of finances. Then Brett needs something. A car, a business loan, education funding. By the time the husband realizes what's happening, she's extracted what she wanted and moved on. Why didn't you warn people? I tried. She threatened legal action for defamation. My lawyer said without concrete proof I'd lose. He met my eyes. But if you're documenting everything like this, you might have what I didn't. A paper trail. We talked for 2 hours. I recorded everything with his permission. By the time we finished, I had a complete picture of Catherine's operation. My father wasn't her victim. He was her mark. And I'd been the obstacle she'd needed to remove. The family smear campaign intensified. Amanda, my half-sister, started posting vague social media messages about toxic people who abandon family over money. She never used my name, but the implications were clear. Catherine shared the posts with crying emojis and comments about heartbreak and betrayal. My father's friends started calling me. Elena, your father says you've cut him off completely. Is everything okay? I kept my responses simple. Family situations are complicated. I'm focusing on my education right now. But then something unexpected happened. My cousin Angela, who I barely knew, commented on one of Amanda's posts. Maybe ask why Elena left instead of assuming she's wrong. Sometimes there's more to the story. Other cousins started liking Angela's comment. Someone else added, I've known Elena since she was a kid. She's not the dramatic type. If she walked away, there's a reason. The narrative was shifting slowly. People were starting to question the one-sided story they'd been fed. Derek messaged me privately. FYI, I told some family members about the college fund situation. Not in detail, just that there was a financial issue. People are asking questions. I didn't respond publicly. But privately, I felt gratitude for those who were willing to question the obvious lies. My father tried calling again. This time, when I didn't answer, he left a voicemail. Elena, people are talking. You need to stop telling lies about what happened. We gave Brett that money because he needed it. Stop making yourself the victim. I saved the voicemail. Added it to my growing collection of evidence. Every message, every text, every email. I was building a case I might never use, but having it felt like armor. Month 8 brought a discovery that changed everything. I was reviewing my own credit report when I noticed something strange. A car loan inquiry from 2 months before Brett got his Audi. The inquiry was in my father's name, but the creditor noted a secondary applicant. Me. I called the bank immediately. I never applied for a car loan. According to our records, the application listed you as a co-applicant for additional creditworthiness, the representative explained. That's fraud. I never signed anything. Do you have documentation proving your identity and that you didn't authorize this? I did. Had everything. And suddenly, the car situation became much more serious than a repossession. It became identity theft. I filed a police report. The detective assigned to my case was sympathetic but realistic. Family fraud cases are complicated. Are you sure you want to pursue this? My signature was forged, I said firmly. Yes, I want to pursue it. The investigation would take time, but I'd started the process. More importantly, it created an official record that my father, or someone in his household, had fraudulently used my information. That night, I received a panicked call from my father. Elena, what the hell did you do? Police called me about a fraud investigation. I didn't do anything, I replied calmly. Someone used my information without permission to secure a car loan. That's identity theft. I reported it. This is insane. It was just a mistake on the application. A mistake. Someone forged my signature, Dad. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. You're destroying this family over paperwork. No, I said quietly. You destroyed this family when you chose a car over your daughter. I'm just protecting myself now. Hung up. The detective called 2 weeks later. Ms. Elena, we've completed our preliminary investigation. The signatures don't match yours, and the contact information provided wasn't yours either. This is definitely fraud. What happens now? We'll be pursuing charges. The district attorney will review the case. I wanted you to know, your father is claiming he didn't know the information was fraudulent. He's saying Catherine handled the application. I wasn't surprised. Of course he'd blame her. But it didn't matter who filled out the forms. He'd benefited from the fraud and never questioned it. Meanwhile, Derek sent me a cryptic text. Check your dad's county records. Something's happening with the house. I pulled up the public records. There it was. Catherine had quietly contacted a divorce attorney. She'd filed a preliminary inquiry about asset division, though no formal papers had been filed yet. Then I noticed something else. The joint bank account my father shared with Catherine showed a recent transfer of $75,000, moved to an account in Catherine's name only. She was getting ready to run. She'd extracted what she could, and now that everything was falling apart, she was preparing her exit. My father had no idea. He was still trying to fix his credit, still hoping Mountain Vista would approve his application, still believing Catherine loved him. Part of me wanted to warn him, but a larger part remembered sitting in that restaurant, watching him dismiss my mother's legacy while his new wife smiled victoriously. He'd made his choice. Now he'd live with the consequences. My phone lit up with my father's number at 2 in the morning. Against my better judgment, I answered. Elena. His voice was broken, desperate. Can we talk? Please. It's 2 a.m., Dad. I know. Sorry. I need help. Real help. He took a shaky breath. The retirement community rejected our application permanently. Catherine won't stop crying. Brett moved out last week without paying the utilities he promised to cover. Everything's falling apart. I sat up in bed, turning on the light. What do you want from me? I don't know. Advice. Help fixing my credit. Just talk to me like you used to. Like I used to, I repeated softly. You mean when I managed everything for you? When I made sure your bills were paid and your credit was good? When I co-signed loans and guaranteed applications? Yes, he said, missing the point entirely. You were always so good at that stuff. I was good at it because I cared about you. Because I thought family meant supporting each other. Pause. But you taught me family is conditional. You taught me that when it came down to it, I wasn't as important as Catherine's wants or Brett's luxuries. That's not fair. Isn't it? You gave away my college fund, Dad. My mother's dying wish. You gave it to a stepson you barely knew for a luxury car he didn't need. And when I was hurt, you called me dramatic. The silence on his end was heavy. Are you sorry for what you did? I asked quietly. Or are you just sorry that you need me now? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was small. I don't know. At least it was honest. The next day, I received a call from an attorney I didn't know. Ms. Elena, my name is Philip Torres. I worked with your mother before she passed. There's something you need to know about her estate. We met at his office. He was elderly, kind-faced, with files that looked decades old. Your mother was very specific about her wishes, he explained, opening a folder. She left instructions regarding the college fund. If it was ever misused or diverted from its intended purpose, certain conditions would trigger. What kind of conditions? He showed me the documents. My mother had been smarter than I'd realized. She'd protected part of her estate, the family home's title, some investments, with a contingency clause. If my education fund was compromised, those assets would transfer to me, not my father. Why didn't anyone tell me this before? Your father was supposed to disclose it when he remarried. It was part of your mother's will conditions. Mr. Torres looked at me seriously. He never did he? No. Then we have grounds to execute the transfer. Your mother protected you, Elena. Even from your father, if it came to that. I sat back stunned. My mother had known. Somehow, even dying, she'd known I might need protection from my father's poor judgment. What do I need to do? File the claim. Show proof the college fund was misused. The estate clause will activate, and those assets become legally yours. I thought about my father, already drowning financially. This would take away the one thing he had left, the house he'd lived in with my mother, the property he'd assumed was his forever. How long do I have to decide? No deadline. But the sooner you file, the sooner you're protected. I took the documents home to review. 2 weeks later, I was invited to speak at a Community Leadership Awards event. The invitation came through my new program. Apparently, my story of earning a full scholarship after overcoming financial obstacles had impressed the committee. I almost declined. Public speaking wasn't my strength, and I wasn't ready to share my story. But Professor Williams encouraged me. Sometimes our struggles help others, he said. You don't have to name names. Just tell your truth. The event was held in a hotel ballroom. I wore my best professional outfit and prepared careful remarks. I didn't know my father would be there until I saw him sitting in the third row, looking uncomfortable in a suit that had seen better days. When my turn came to speak, I walked to the podium with shaking hands. My mother taught me that education is freedom, I began. She made me promise I'd go to college, build a career, create security that nobody could take away. When she died, I worked 2 jobs to honor that promise. I saw my father shift in his seat. But sometimes the people closest to us don't understand what our dreams cost. Sometimes they see our sacrifices as obligations they can spend. Kept my voice steady, professional. I learned that betrayal can come from anywhere. But I also learned that my mother's wisdom was right. Education is freedom. When people took away my security, I still had my mind, my skills, my determination. I continued without naming anyone, but the truth was clear to anyone who knew my story. I talked about finding new opportunities through hardship, about mentors who believed in me, about building a future from the ashes of broken trust. When I finished, the applause was genuine. Several people approached me afterward, sharing their own stories of family betrayal and recovery. My father waited until the crowd thinned, then approached hesitantly. "That was about me," he said quietly. "It was about me," I corrected. "You just happened to be part of my story." The whispers started almost immediately. My father lived in a small community where everyone knew everyone. People who'd heard my speech started connecting dots. The college fund, the stepson, the sudden financial troubles. Derek called me the next day. "Family members are talking. Amanda tried defending your dad, but too many people heard your speech. They're asking questions he can't answer." A week later, Mountain Vista Estates sent a formal rejection letter. Mr. Torres called to tell me. Apparently, the retirement board had requested my mother's estate documentation as part of their financial review. They found the contingency clause, he explained. They realized your father might not actually own the primary asset he'd claimed on his application. That's grounds for immediate rejection. He's been rejected permanently. Yes. And Elena, there's more. I submitted your claim regarding the college fund misuse. The court has scheduled a hearing to transfer the estate assets to you. It'll be final in 30 days unless your father contests it. I sat with that information, feeling the weight of it. My father's dream retirement gone. His financial security, crumbling. And now, the house he'd lived in for 20 years would legally become mine. Will he contest it? Yes. He can try. But your mother's will is clear, and you have documentation proving the fund was misused. He doesn't have a strong case. After hanging up, I pulled up the family text chain I'd been ignoring for months. New messages had piled up. The tone had shifted. Less attack, more confusion. Amanda. Dad, what's going on with the house? My father. Legal issues. Nothing to worry about. Cousin Angela. Heard Mountain Vista rejected your application permanently. That's rough. Catherine had gone completely silent. The house became the center of everything. My father finally called, voice defeated. Elena, we need to talk about your mother's estate. I'm listening. The lawyer says you're claiming the house. You can't do that. This is my home. It was Mom's home, I corrected gently. She protected it for me in case something like this happened. You should have told me about the contingency clause when you remarried. I forgot about it. You forgot about the condition that my education fund had to be protected. Or you hoped I'd never find out. Silence. Dad, you made a choice. You gave away my future for a car. Mom made a choice too. She protected me from exactly that kind of decision. Her will is legal and clear. Where am I supposed to go? His voice cracked. Catherine's talking about leaving. Brett's gone. The house is all I have left. You should have thought about that before. Elena, please. I'm begging you. You never begged when I asked you to protect my college fund. You never apologized when I tried to explain how much it hurt. You only care now because you're facing consequences. I'm your father. Then act like it, I said, my voice breaking despite my resolve. Fathers protect their children. They honor their promises. They don't throw away their daughter's future for a stepson's luxury car. I hung up before he could respond, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't victory. It was just sad. The final legal hearing happened on a cold Tuesday morning. I wore my best suit and brought Mr. Torres with me. My father arrived alone. No Catherine, no Brett, no supportive family members. He looked smaller somehow, worn down by months of financial stress and betrayal. The judge reviewed the documents quickly. My mother's will was airtight, the contingency clause clear, and my proof of the misused college fund was comprehensive. Mr. Hayes, did you disclose this estate condition to your current wife before accessing the college fund? The judge asked. I didn't think it mattered, my father admitted. It specifically mattered. They will explicitly protect this fund. By allowing it to be used for purposes other than your daughter's education, you triggered the transfer clause. The judge looked at me. Ms. Elena, the court finds in your favor. The property and associated assets are legally yours, effective immediately. My father dropped his head into his hands. However, the judge continued, this court encourages families to handle these transitions with grace. Ms. Elena, you're not required to provide housing, but you may choose to negotiate terms if you wish. I nodded, unable to speak. Outside the courthouse, my father approached me. What happens now? You have 60 days to move out, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. After that, the property is legally mine. Where you go is your choice. Elena, I have nowhere. Neither did I when you took my college fund. But I figured it out. You will too. As I walked to my car, I heard him call out, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I stopped but didn't turn around. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I lost. It doesn't restore my mother's legacy. It just makes you feel better. I drove away without looking back. 6 weeks later, my father appeared at my university campus. Security called me from the lecture hall where I'd just finished presenting my thesis. "There's a man here claiming to be your father. He's asking to speak with you." I found him in the lobby, looking lost and desperate. We sat on a bench outside. "I'm moving tomorrow," he said quietly, "into a small apartment across town. Catherine filed for divorce last week. She took everything from the joint accounts and left." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "Brett's working at a gas station now. Some kind of overnight shift. Catherine remarried already. Met someone in Florida through an online dating site." He laughed bitterly. "I should have listened to you. I never asked you to listen to me. I just asked you to honor Mom's wishes." He nodded slowly. "I know. And I didn't. I chose poorly." We sat in silence for a moment. "Are you okay?" asked finally. "No. But I will be. Maybe this is what I needed. To lose everything to understand what mattered." He met my eyes. "You mattered. You always mattered. I'm sorry I didn't show it." "Thank you for saying that. Can I ask?" He hesitated. "Can I ever make this right?" Thought carefully. "I don't know. But you can start by being honest with yourself about what happened. Not just to me but to you. You let people manipulate you because you wanted to believe you'd found happiness. Maybe learn from that." He nodded, standing slowly. "I hear you're graduating soon. With honors." "Yes. Your mother would be proud." I watched him walk away, shoulders hunched, carrying the weight of his choices. I felt sadness, but also a strange sense of peace. 3 months later, I stood in the doorway of my new home, the house my mother had protected for me. I'd sold my father's belongings per his instruction and renovated the space to feel like mine. On the mantel, I placed a framed photo of my mother, young and smiling. "I kept the promise," I whispered. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find a young woman, maybe 20, holding a folder nervously. "Ms. Elena." "I'm Sophia. I'm the recipient of the scholarship you established." I'd created a fund for young women from difficult family situations, using part of my consulting salary. It felt like the right way to honor my mother's legacy. "Come in," I said warmly. "Tell me about yourself." As Sophia talked about her dreams and struggles, I saw myself in her determination. She'd faced betrayal too. Parents who'd prioritized addiction over her needs, family who'd dismissed her ambitions. "Why did you start this scholarship?" she asked. "Because I know what it feels like to have your future stolen," I replied honestly. "And I know what it means when someone believes in you anyway." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." "I do actually. That's why I did it." After she left, I stood in my living room, my home earned through pain and perseverance. My phone buzzed with a message from Professor Williams. "Consulting firm called. They want you to start early. Partner track." "Congratulations, Elena." I smiled, looking at my mother's photo. I'd started with nothing but a betrayed promise and a broken heart. Now I had a career, a home, and the knowledge that I'd survived the worst and built something beautiful from the ashes. My father had tried to take my future. Instead, he'd forced me to build a better one. A year after the legal transfer, Derek sent me a photo. It showed Brett behind a gas station counter, looking exhausted and annoyed. The caption read, "Saw your stepbrother. Karma works fast." Another message followed, a screenshot from Catherine's Facebook. She was indeed remarried, posing with an elderly man on a beach in Florida. The pattern continued. My father had texted me a few times over the months. Short messages. "Hope you're well. Congratulations on your job. Your mother would be proud." I responded politely but kept distance. Some wounds healed, but trust once shattered took years to rebuild. Maybe we'd get there someday. Maybe we wouldn't. Amanda had reached out with a careful apology. "I didn't understand what really happened. I'm sorry I judged you. We'd had coffee once. It was awkward but honest. Professor Williams retired but stayed in touch. You turned your pain into purpose, he told me. That's rare. My scholarship fund had grown. 5 young women were now in college because of it. Each one reminded me why the struggle mattered. I sat in my home office, reviewing applications for the next scholarship cycle, when I found one that stopped me cold. The applicant's story was eerily familiar. Father who'd remarried, college fund diverted to step-siblings, family who'd called her selfish for being hurt. I called her immediately. This is Elena Reed from the Scholarship Foundation. I read your application. Oh, she sounded nervous. I wasn't sure if I should be so honest about my family situation. You should always be honest about your truth, I interrupted gently. And I want you to know you're getting the scholarship. Full ride. She started crying. Really? Because someone once helped me when I'd lost everything. Now it's my turn to help you. 2 years after that restaurant dinner that changed everything, I sat in a conference room closing the biggest deal of my consulting career. My team had worked months on this project, and the client was thrilled. As we shook hands and celebrated, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Saw the article about your promotion. Partner at your firm. I'm proud of you. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I finished celebrating with my team, then drove home to my house. The home my mother had protected, the home I'd fought to keep. Inside, everything was exactly as I wanted it. Clean, simple mine. I finally texted back. Thank you. 2 words. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just acknowledgement. Maybe someday we'd rebuild something. Maybe we wouldn't. Either way, I'd learned the most valuable lesson my mother could have taught me. I didn't need anyone's approval to know my worth. I'd built a career on my own merit. I'd created a home from ashes. I'd turned betrayal into purpose by helping others who'd faced similar pain. My father had thought he was giving Brett a future when he handed over that college fund. What he'd actually done was force me to build my own future, one that didn't depend on anyone's promises but my own. I walked to the mantel and picked up my mother's photo. I did it, Mom, I whispered. Not the way we planned. But I did it. Outside my window, the city lights twinkled like promises. Tomorrow I'd interview more scholarship applicants. Next week I'd present to another major client. Next month I'd probably get another awkward text from my father. But tonight I just stood in my home in my life, feeling the weight of everything I'd survived and everything I'd become. I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't broken. I was exactly who I was meant to be. A woman who'd learned that the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was building something so beautiful that everyone who doubted you finally understood what they'd lost. And I'd built something magnificent.